Video 2: Justification for Colonialism. Hi again. It seems that to a great extent the reason for colonial expansion was profit. People wanted to make money. Another reason was competition between European nations about who will have the largest empire. Maybe a sense that if you're left behind, you will be colonized yourself. If you remember in the song you did your assignment on for last week, and sometimes these were justification enough. It is in this quote from an alphabet book called An ABC for Baby Patriots. The pride of having the most colonies seems to be good enough reason to have a lot of colonies. C is for colonies. Rightly we boast. Right? We are rightly proud of them. That of all the great nations, Great Britain has most. Right? This is for little kids, and they are boasting that they have the most colonies. That's enough. You don't have to justify more. You don't need any more justification. You don't need any more justification. But sometimes Europeans wanted to see themselves as moral at the same time as they expanded their empires. Often, often colonialism and imperialism were presented as benevolent, as good, even generous to the people of the foreign land. We're doing this for you guys. From early on, colonialist armies were accompanied by missionaries, people who came to convert the native population to Christianity. They believed that they were saving the people's souls by introducing them to the true religion. They thought that the expansion of Christianity to more and more people was a good enough cause in order to exploit and hurt them in many other ways. Okay, we take away all your gold, but you get to live forever in heaven. Sounds like a good deal to me. In the 18th century and the 19th century, Europe became more secular, but colonialism continued. It increased. The justification shifted from religion to the idea of civilizing and modernizing other nations and people. The idea was that Europeans are better than all the other people of the world, and that their culture, and not just their technology, was more advanced, more civilized. The Europeans are enlightened and civilized, while the others are barbarians living in darkness. People of the rest of the world need European help in order to be better, be civilized. These people should thank Europe for their intervention. Not all people outside of Europe were treated exactly the same in these justifications. Not all Not all people outside of Europe were treated exactly the same in these justifications. One approach was an idea of savages, savage barbarian people who were considered not to really have any culture or civilization. They were defined by lack of culture. They were seen as almost a blank slate, tabula rasa, on which Europeans can write their own civilization. It was how a lot of Europeans treated Africans, Native Americans, and Pacific Islanders. Sometimes this was explicitly racist, as in believing that these people are inherently inferior to the West, to Europeans. However, sometimes the racism was more implicit, just suggesting that these people need to be uplifted. Right? We don't think they are inherently inferior, we just think they need our help. That in this discourse sometimes they are presented as children who need education from the mature civilized Europeans. Europeans could not really think that way when they encountered other cultures. when they reached places like the Muslim and Arab worlds, India and China, they were not blind enough not to see that these places actually had an ancient culture and a lot of history and civilization. However, they were able to see these civilizations as backward and in need of Western guidance. They presented them, thought of them as needing Western guidance, not because they had no culture, but because their culture was in decline. They had already seen their best days and now need saving from this decadence. The golden age of this civilization was in the past, and now Europeans will lead the way. In settler colonialism societies, so benevolence was one kind of justification, and the superiority of Western culture was part of that. But in settler colonialist societies and plantations as well, violence and exploitation of the local population could also be justified by the desire to protect your own people. So the idea is that now that we are here in the colonial space, it is our right and duty to protect ourselves from those around us who seek to send us back to Europe. So protecting white lives, European lives, and property, no less than lives, property, became a priority that justified violent action against the original population. And not just the original population, also the populations that were imported into the new territory in order to do the hard labor. A lot of this violence, a lot of the violence in North America against Native Americans, as well as African Americans, can be understood through this lens. I'm talking about these justifications because I think to a certain degree they still live among us and are used to justify continued exploitation of what is now known as the Third World and populations that come from these Third World countries. Colonialism was one of the strongest pushes towards globalization, and I want you to know how it was justified. Maybe you recognize some of these justifications when people explain certain globalizing actions today, certain interventions in poorer and third world countries today. These justifications will also echo in works of the writers who are these justifications will echo in the works of writers who belong to colonized or formerly colonized people. In the next video, we will read. In the next video, I will read a poem that takes up some of these justifications and celebrates them.